love them or hate them, like it or not, if equilibrium is coming to the tariffs, I think it's good for the country. It may end up being bad for the value of the dollar. So what's that going to do? Tariffs will probably, and I'm not an analyst, I'm not an expert, but with the devalue of the dollar, tariffs will probably create inflation and increase prices, and the dollar value will go down. Those of you, myself, my peeps, real estate investors, all my rock stars out there, you know already real estate is one of the greatest hedges against inflation, because if prices go up, property values go up too. So now there's a little bit of a balancing act that has to happen here. Because what does all this mean, right? If prices go up and it's harder to borrow money, that's going to make it more difficult barrier to entry. Hey, what's up all of my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Golden Nuggets, where we will take a tip, tactic, or technique and we will unpack it that you can use it as a tool in your financial investor tool belt. Well, today I want to unpack something that's been in the news a lot and a lot of the commentaries I've been watching. Everyone's trying to wrap their head around tariffs and what's going on and what's going to happen. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat, I am not an expert in every market, in every type of investment, so I'm not going to pretend to be. But I do see some of the ripples that this is going to play out into the rental market. So I want to kind of unpack that a little bit and kind of give you an idea of where I think it's going and how you as a real estate investor may be able to prepare for what's coming, because it is going to come. So let's shed a little bit of light on this and dip in. So first off, why rental markets? Well, you've got single family homes and you've got the rental market, and there's always both sides of that equation. If 60% of the market is renting, then 40% is buying homes. And that's right about where it is today. So home prices right now over the past 5-6 years have been very expensive to build. A lot of that's been energy code and a lot of the regulations that have gone into it. I think for every new home being built right now, there's like over $90,000 is going towards regulations and compliance. That's like almost $10,000 of every home. So we're finding now that home sizes, new homes being built, are actually shrinking to make them more affordable per square foot, because there's an issue right now with affordability, and we're going to get into that. So way back in the 1950s, houses were being built for about 1,500 square feet. Now, in 2015, homes were being built for 2,500 square feet. So that's 1,000 square feet. So those houses are going to cost more. To keep your average house at around $400K, new houses today are going to have to be built smaller because it costs more per square foot. So renters are not having many choices as to where they can or if they can buy homes, because the inventory is so limited across all these different markets and the costs are so high. The costs are going up to build new construction, so development and new construction is actually starting to cool down. We did see a spurt. If you watch some of the other shows, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we were 5 to 6 million dwelling units short in the market across the United States, in Central America, United States. So that has come down a little bit to about 3 million shortage. There has been building. It has been expensive to build, and there's more of a divide and rift between who can buy and who has to rent. So now that the costs are even going up higher, the inventory that has been coming into the market, these are from permits that have been pulled 1, 2, 3 years ago, because it takes time, even if you're doing a rehab or a flip, it could take 18 months, a year, 2 years to do this. So the inventory that's been coming into the market now has been from permits that have been being pulled 2 or 3 years ago. So in 2026, we're going to see that pipeline start to dry up from all of these new construction projects or rehabs that have been going in. Because what we're seeing coming down the road, prices are going to get more expensive to build and to rehab. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So when inventory shifts into a market, when builders come in and they overbuild a little bit, let's just use that for an example. So they find a really hot market where the rents are low, opportunity is great, so all of the developers flood into that market, pull a bunch of permits, build a bunch of property. So now we've got some discrepancy in the markets across the United States. Some of the areas that were hot and ready to go are now seeing saturation or oversaturation. So it's going to take a little bit of time for those markets to hit equilibrium. But when they do, we're still going to see a strong rental market. And I'll tell you why in a couple minutes here. So anyone who's been in the real estate game for a while has seen interest rates from 3 up to 18%. So what we see in the market right now, rates are pretty stable at 8% for anyone who's historically a real estate investor. I mean, people who got in 4 or 5 years ago, Biden administration, 2-3% interest, they thought like, wow, this is fantastic, and they bought a bunch of stuff, which is great. But now that they're seeing 8%, they're not liking it so much. But those of us who are seasoned, who've been around, we know that 8% is right about where it's going to be. So something that a lot of investors overlook if you're going to be doing multifamily, you must have reserves, okay? The only way you're going to survive when the markets go up and down to cover your property is to have reserves to cover your real estate. And depending on who you ask, some may say have 3 months, some may say have 6 months, some may say have a year if things go really south. And this is per property. So if I've got 3 buildings, a 3, 3, and a 4, I need to have enough in reserves to cover 10 units for 3 months. So that's for 30 months. That's almost 3 years of reserves to cover those properties. That's a lot of money to hold in reserves, but it would be a lot more painful if you didn't have it. So you need to have the reserves. The best option today for buying is from distressed owners who bought wrong. They may have bought with an adjustable rate or weren't able to raise their rents or thought rents were always going to go up 5-6%. And now that they're seeing the market kind of stabilize a little bit and rents starting to cool, not raise as much, they're finding themselves in trouble. So investors, folks like myself, we're going to be looking for these types of deals. Now this is going to happen in small deals and it's going to happen in the larger deals. Now the smaller deals are pretty easy. That's your bread and butter stuff, your 4, 6, 8, a 12 unit, fine, easy. You could probably negotiate those terms. There is still a bit of blood in the water. Realtors are listing these properties lower to get a bidding war, to get a higher price. But here's what's going to happen. This is going to be my 3rd time through a cycle. And historically, this is what I've seen happen. And we're seeing it happen now over the past couple months. More properties are coming onto the market. A lot of our investors are starting to sell their properties. In our portfolio of management, we've got 4 or 5 units, buildings, that the owners are now starting to sell. So what happens? It's a very interesting psychology here. If I see my neighbor selling his 3-family, 4-family on the market, and I see him getting a good price, and I've come to grips with 8% interest rates are normal, then I might think, hey, it's a good time for me to sell. So what am I going to do? I'm going to list my property on the market for $1,000 less than his. And then my neighbor next to me is going to see both of us trying to cash out on the market, and they're going to list for $2,000 less. And this is going to start an avalanche This is what we've seen historically of properties coming onto the market. And what happens in supply and demand? The more properties on the market, the cheaper the price is going to be. Will people be able to buy these homes? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know what's going to happen with the rates, but we're going to dig into that a little bit. So your buying opportunities now are going to be looking for those mom and pops who've been on the sidelines, didn't want to sell because the interest rates were so high, and they realize, okay, if I sell this property now and I got to go buy another home, I'm paying a high interest rate. Well, if they're no longer Egyptian, no longer in denial, and they realize that, hey, this is my time, they're going to start to sell. So we're going to see more of this start to happen. These are on the smaller deals. Now, on the developers who started this project 2-3 years ago, they're finding their holding costs are starting to go through the roof. So some of the larger investors, and we just saw Ken McElroy, he's buying his first property in years. Well, he's buying properties all the time, but his first big deal, he's buying right now for the cost of the debt that the developer has on that deal. So he's basically walking into that deal, taking it over for the debt that that developer owes to the bank, just so the developer can get out underneath from this deal. So a lot of these opportunities you're seeing today are going to be from failed landlords, adjusting rates, lack of inventory, people seeing my neighbor posting, so now I'm going to post. So we're going to start to see this start to flow. So that's kind of the rental versus home buyer, single family home homeowner. That's the dichotomy between these, right? If people can't buy homes, then they're going to be forced to rent until they can buy a home or until inventory comes up. So let's keep going because we're going to get into the tariffs here. So love him or hate him, Donald Trump, I feel like in the last 4 months of him being in office, we're in April right now, late April, we're looking at a totally different government. I mean, Doge and all these things that are going on. It just feels like we're living in a different country 4 months later. So the DOT plot, the Department of Treasury plot, that's the Fed and the people working on the rates and all that. They're kind of juggling all this at the same time, and they don't really know if the rates are going to go up or going to go down. But there are some factors that are coming down the pipeline that are probably going to make rates go up. Now, on the other side of this, we have President Trump right now, who's a real estate guy, and I'm sure he's going to be pushing, and you hear it on the news now, he's pushing for lower interest rates. He's not going to fire the Fed commission, but he said on TV that he really wished he would have considered lowering rates. So he's putting it out there. Now, why does the president want lower rates? He's also got programs out there. He's talked about releasing federal land for the development of housing because he knows that we're in a housing shortage. So we're looking at about 512,000 acres of, a lot of acres that he's going to release from the government to be used and put on the drawing board for the development of housing. So what's that going to mean? This is going to be just like the opportunity zones, all right? For him to make this work, for President Trump to make this plan of this government land being used for development, the only way it's going to work is if he has cheap financing or if he has policies in place to favor development. He's a real estate guy. He knows how that works. He's probably going to shoot for that. So again, these areas, I mean, if it's way out in the middle of nowhere, it's not going to work. To make this work, he has to have cheap financing, and it has to be the right area, the right spot, the right location. It can't disrupt wildlife, and it's got to be a desirable area where people can live, buy, shop, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, buy food, all of that. Realtor.com is suggesting over the next couple of years up to 2006 that interest rates may go down to 6%, 6.3%. So that may help. Right now, I think a homeowner, first-time homeowner, can probably go in and get an interest rate of 6.8%. So that's kind of where the government is playing in with this right now. They know that there's a housing shortage. They know affordability is a problem. And they know they have to make this affordable for building. So here we are. Tariff wars are going on. I don't want to call them wars. I want to call it equilibrium because my personal opinion, the United States has been getting the crap beaten out of them on tariffs for quite a long time. We're paying double what other countries are paying. So love them or hate them, like it or not, if equilibrium is coming to the tariffs, I think it's good for the country. It may end up being bad for the value of the dollar. So what's that going to do? Tariffs will probably, and I'm not an analyst, I'm not an expert, but with the devalue of the dollar, tariffs will probably create inflation and increase prices, and the dollar value will go down. Those of you, myself, my peeps, real estate investors, all my rock stars out there, you know already real estate is one of the greatest hedges against inflation, because if prices go up, property values go up too. So now there's a little bit of a balancing act that has to happen here. Because what does all this mean, right? If prices go up and it's harder to borrow money, that's going to make it more difficult barrier to entry. Building new properties today is expensive. Wait till these tariffs kick in. When we're trying to get lumber and supplies from other countries and it costs more now, they're suggesting that these tariffs estimated are going to add another $9,200, almost another $10,000 per building being built just because of the costs going up in tariffs. And that's going to get passed along to the home buyer. It's going to be a smaller home. It's going to cost more to build, and it's going to be difficult. So that's probably going to mean more renters. Will we see interest rates increase during inflation from tariffs? It depends. The dollar, if it's devalued, it depends. I don't know which way it's going to go. I'm not that type of analyst. However, during inflation, the value of your assets will go up. Your real estate values will go up. So if you've been listening and you have your reserves and you can withstand a storm of high interest rates, high inflation, and cooling of rents, if you can make it through that, you're going to be absolutely fine. Now, how do these tariffs and inflation and interest rates, how is this going to affect multifamily and rentals? Well, affordability for both single family and for multifamily is going to be a number one issue going forward. There are going to be more renters, period. If they can't buy homes, if they can't afford to get loans, if their dollar is not going to be able to afford to buy that home, they have to live somewhere, they're going to rent. Inflation will make it harder to pay rent and mortgages. So again, if you're that savvy investor who's been on the sidelines for the last 3 or 4 years holding your gunpowder, your money and cash reserves, hold that thought, watch the front line, wait for your opportunities. I don't think we're there yet, but I'm starting to see more properties come onto the market. Inflation is going to make it harder, pay rent, pay mortgages, and it will become increasingly harder to get pre-qualified renters. So there's the downside on this. Sure, your property is going to be more valuable. Your rents, because there's more renters and less units, supply and demand would suggest that your rents are going to go up. But now there's a risk here that you have to keep an eye on. If your rents go too high, your expensive mortgage for your rental property is not going to be paid. So as painful as this is going to sound, and a lot of the old timers who've been doing this a long time, they will keep their rents a little bit lower than everybody else to make sure they have higher occupancy and lower vacancy rents. It's going to get harder to find pre-qualified renters, more people in foreclosure, more people with bad credit. I have no idea how long these government subsidy programs are going to exist. Since COVID, we've seen them diminish. Right now, it's at $7,000 annually. It used to be a lot more than that. But when RAFT and these programs started out, it was a $4,000 once-in-a-lifetime event that you could borrow. It may end up going back to that, especially if the government can't afford it. So what do you need? You're going to need stellar property management. This is going to be critical to keeping your units filled and keeping your tenants happy, staying on top of your maintenance. You can't be charging too much for rent. You may need to lower your rents to affordable rates. It's going to be harder to buy new buildings, especially if interest rates do go up. So this is going to be a time favorable to those who have money. So the 20% of investors out there who've been sitting on cash reserves are probably going to pick up 80% of the inventory that's out there, which is great for them. And if they have a good business mind to run it properly and can hold reserves, they should be able to sustain that. So your existing portfolio properties, you should position now for potential inflation hits. You should be sustainable. You should be watching your reserves. If you don't have reserves, you should be scurrying that away right now. Another problem I've seen investors do is they'll load up on all these properties that they can buy before they stabilize each property. So I might buy this property and that property and that property, be rehabbing this one, not be able to stabilize this one with good solid tenants. Same thing happens. Now I'm stuck right at ground zero, where now I have to sell at my debt to the investor who was prepared and saw this coming. And that's what I hope that this podcast, this golden nugget, is going to do for you today. Hopefully it's going to give you some insight. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to every market, but the ripple effects into multifamily are going to be significant. We are going to see, I think rents will cool even in inflation, because people just won't be able to afford it. And if you're an investor in multifamily or rentals, you're going to need to collect rent. So you may need to lower the bar as to what you're expecting to collect rent so you can meet your mortgage and stay sustainable. So what do I think is going to happen? Prices will go up. Affordability issues are going to be absolutely critical. All real estate investors right now should prepare for inflation. We're going to see more renters on the market because they can't buy homes. Screening tenants is going to be absolutely more critical. It's critical right now because of so many rent subsidies. People come in, don't pay rent, and want you to take them to court. If the dollar value is lower and subsidies go away, it's even going to get more critical screening tenants to get the right applicants, right renters in your building. Keeping tenants in your building, you're going to have to keep them happy. They're going to have a lot more choices out there, especially if they're a great tenant. If I'm a great tenant and I can afford any unit, I'm not going to put up with repairs not getting done, maintenance not getting taken care of. I'm going to go where they appreciate my dollar that I'm paying for rent. And take heed, my real estate peeps. You should be hearing that you need to take care of your tenants. Absolutely, you got to have your property reserves. You got to have this, especially if you're expanding your portfolio. The larger your portfolio, the larger your reserves. It needs to be proportional. And you must have stellar property management. Service is going to be absolutely critical, because if people aren't happy with what you're able to give them, they're going to move on, go somewhere else. So just to recap again, I believe prices are going to go up. Affordability is going to be an issue. Property owners need to prepare for inflation. There's going to be more renters coming onto the market because they can't buy homes. Screening tenants is going to be critical. Keeping tenants is going to even be more critical. Having property reserves proportional to your portfolio is going to be critical. And being able to deliver stellar property management to keep your vacancies full is going to have to, it's going to have to happen. There's no other way you're going to survive in this business if you can't provide good property management customer service. Well, that's a lot to take in on this one. I hope this golden nugget has been helpful for you to try to unbunk or debunk or demystify tariff turbulence, which is going to be coming down the road. And I hope this helps, and be prepared. We don't know what's going to happen, so the best thing you can do is be prepared and stay tuned as we learn more and share out there with all of our peeps. Ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, my real estate rock stars out there in the cyber world, this is Brian Lucier from the Why Not Real Estate Podcast Golden Nugget signing off, and we'll see you on the next one.